more on this, we are now being joined by Scott Lucas, professor of international politics, Clinton Institute, University College Dublin. Thank you so much for joining us on WION, and welcome back. Amid the news of the first domestic flight taking off and nightlife returning to Damascus, how close is Syria to normalcy?
Well, it's good news, just that these markers that, you have an airport which is reopening, that you have business which is continuing in Damascus and in other cities, and that you have a nightlife. But these are just the first steps. I mean, let's recall that this is a country which had been ravaged by the 53-year rule of the Assad regime, and then especially since 2011, with the devastating death and destruction to put down mass protest. More than 11 million people displaced. That's more than half the country's population. Hundreds of thousands have killed. So this is going to be a long process. It's going to be a long process to get economic recovery. It's going to be a long process to get a transitional government in place, and then a longer-term government in place, perhaps after elections. It's going to be a long-term process to make sure there's security for all Syrians in those areas which are controlled by the transitional government, and also in the Kurdish area as well.
Yeah, and the United States is urging its citizens to leave Syria because of escalating security concerns. What are these concerns at this point?
Well, I mean, I think generally that's a precautionary move by the Americans. In the areas that are controlled by the new government, it's been remarkably peaceful, to be honest with you, given the decades of violence. There have been isolated cases of retribution against Assadists who were responsible, for example, for the killing of detainees, who were responsible for torture in some cases. But there has not been systematic violence against a group, whether it be Christian, Alawite, Shia, or Sunni. There is the concern about Israel expanding its occupation in the southwest of Syria. And the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu quite clearly indicated yesterday that that occupation will expand with his visit to Syrian territory, Mount Hermon. And there is this concern that you referred to, which is, the Turkish-backed rebels and the U.S.-backed Kurdish forces. Can they avoid a confrontation? Indeed, can they avoid what would be a war for control of those northern areas?
Yesterday, we were at the United Nations. There was a consultation and briefing on Syria. The envoy for Syria at the UN has warned that conflict has not ended in the country. And I know we just talked about this. There is a humanitarian crisis as well. But ultimately, do you think that the U.S. brokered ceasefire between the pro-Turkish fighter and Syrian Kurds will hold?
I think you're just talking about a temporary, basically, deal to avoid conflict while you try to work out something in the longer term. That specific ceasefire is over an area in Aleppo province called Manbij. My expectation, I wouldn't call it a prediction, but my expectation is that there is a move to get a deal where the Kurdish forces will pull out of Manbij. They'll pull back into their northeastern area, which is where the Kurdish Authority is in control. There is another proposal by the Kurds today to demilitarize the zone around the city of Kobani near the Turkish border. That's a very important city for Kurds. It's one that they held for many months against Islamic State attack, but they're hoping that a demilitarized zone means, of course, that there will be no prospect of a Turkish-backed attack by the rebels to try to overwhelm that area.
All right. Well, thank you so much for all of those insights and analyses. Scott Lucas, I look forward to speaking to you again soon. We're going to follow this story, of course, very closely.
Thank you.